Welcome to MTMG's IT Roundtable, where we bring the power of human connections to the tech world. Our experts become part of your team, so whatever tech problem is keeping you up at night, we can help you solve it.
Joining us today is Tom Gregor, Director of Strategic Partnerships at Orbcomm, a leader in industrial IoT and satellite connectivity solutions. With over 2 decades of experience in telecommunications and IoT, Tom has been at the forefront of connecting assets in remote locations, ensuring global visibility through hybrid satellite and cellular networks. Today, we're exploring the challenges and opportunities of satellite IoT, how AI is transforming asset tracking, and what the future holds for global connectivity. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul and Joe. Great to see you.
Good to see you as well. It's been a little too long. We've known each other for a day or two. You used to put up with me back in the day when we were selling BlackBerries to people all over the Northeast. So just to date ourselves a little bit there. But thinking of this, your career has spanned a lot. Telecom, IoT, satellite. What drew you to the world of satellite connectivity, and why is it such a critical piece of IoT today?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. It has been quite a career, from selling that first converged BlackBerry that brought voice to a converged device at the turn of the century, moving into an M2M role, which machine-to-machine communications existed before the acronym IoT was invented for the Internet of Things. So it has been quite a career. In the early days of machine-to-machine communications, Orbcomm was one of T-Mobile's first M2M customers. So I supported Orbcomm and their connectivity needs on the cellular side, and was always intrigued at the solutions that they were bringing to market. Today at Orb, our purpose is really to make the world more sustainable and safer by bringing enhanced visibility to our customers' operations. And those operations could reside in transportation, maritime, heavy equipment, and just a myriad of different use cases within those industries. So I was always intrigued by the satellite capabilities, and now bringing that convergence of cellular and satellite together into solutions really allows our customers to have great visibility on their assets wherever they might be across the globe. As cellular is a great technology. It covers probably 90% of the world's population. However, when you look at the surface of the Earth, cellular only covers maybe 15%. So there is just a very wide gap of the Earth's surface where a customer's asset might be that needs some type of connectivity. And Orbcomm and its solutions allows us to reach those assets.
Nice. There are certain things that make me feel old. And when somebody says, back at the turn of the century, I start thinking, wow. But anyway, Orbcomm has built a unique position in the satellite-powered IoT solution space. And so can you walk us through how your satellite network operates and what sets it apart from traditional cellular IoT?
Yes, Joe. So our service, we have a very long standing partnership with Viasat, and we've developed what we consider a low data or low bandwidth satellite service. It is 100% devoted to IoT services. So we do not have competing technologies like voice or other things. We're 100% focused on delivering IoT data solutions. The technology is a message-based, so it's not a TCP/IP broadband-like service. It's store and forward message-based. It is bidirectional, so we can send messages out to an asset, to a terminal or a modem, and also receive communication back from that asset. All of our messages are acknowledged, so we know that the message has been received at its destination. It is a global service, and again, we in partnership with Viasat. That service runs over their geostationary constellation. So by using 4 of Viasat's satellites, we can provide global connectivity for our customers and provide that data service.
And just real quick as a follow-up, just so people understand, when you talk about sending messages back and forth to an asset, can you just give us a quick example or two of how that, like, is it a vending machine? Is it an agricultural piece of machinery or some of those things?
Sure. One example, a new industry that I became aware of just working at Orbcomm is in maritime and specifically in fisheries. And I thought that when you went out to go fishing, you got on your boat and put your line in the water and hoped for a bite, or you might have had some technology on the boat to see what the fish finder, what's below the boat at the time. That has now advanced to there's an industry of fishing buoys. And that buoy is dropped in the ocean and it has technology that it can now scan what is now swimming below that buoy. And if there's a school of fish, it can now has the intelligence to know what type of fish is now swimming under that buoy. And it's now using satellite connectivity. So now above the buoy, floating above the water's edge and has now line of sight to that satellite, it can now communicate back to that fishery what it has just detected and what type of school of fish that is there. So again, to do that, we're not taking video or pictures of that fish. It's just some bytes of data that is now letting that commercial fishermen know what they've just detected in the waters and where that buoy is located.
That sounds fascinating. And they can now plan their day that, okay, well, that's where the tuna is, or that's where the certain fish that they're looking for. Okay, great. We have to go to that area today. That's really interesting.
Think
But that
about
does bring
the
up a point.
efficiencies of the cost of fuel. So now you now have
Mhm.
a targeted location to go and fish for that school of tuna.
Exactly. That brings up a point. What are some of the biggest challenges in satellite IoT connectivity today? And how is Orbcomm working to overcome them?
There are a few challenges, certainly moving from cellular to satellite. There is just the amount of data that can be sent over that resource. Satellite is limited. And certainly when we talk about what we're providing at Orbcomm in a message-based technology, our message size today is a 10K byte message to a terminal, and we can support 6,400 bytes from that terminal back into the platform. So from that standpoint, it is an education on really optimizing what you need to send over that satellite link, that we might not need to send an entire video or an entire picture, or can we do some compression on the edge and build some intelligence with AI on the edge and really only send the bytes of information that are needed at the back end for processing. In terms of cost, yes, there is a difference between cellular and satellite. Again, today, satellite, we're talking in kilobytes versus gigabytes on the cellular side. And from a cost perspective, the pricing for kilobytes might look like a gigabyte price on the cellular side. So it is an education to the customer and to our solution provider. But at the end of the day, it's the return on investment and what is the asset that they're tracking? What is the value of that asset? And maybe a $10 rate plan per month is certainly viable when they're tracking $1 million piece of heavy equipment around the globe.
Mhm. Well, and I also think it's a trade-off on the capabilities of each. So cellular, yes, it can do a lot more data at one time. It can do it faster, lower latency. That's great, but you're not going to get it in the middle of nowhere, and you're not going to get it in the ocean. So you're paying for that ability to have that global coverage in the middle of the ocean or nowhere. So that is an education. You're right. But people, when they understand that, I think they realize, okay, well, there's strengths to satellite that cellular doesn't have. But I think if you could take a second and just discuss the difference between the two different types of satellites that are most prevalent today, and that's the low Earth orbit and high Earth orbit, and what each of their strengths are.
Yes. So the low Earth orbit constellation, those are, I would say, more prevalent, or a lot more operators are getting into the market today with the new GSMA Release 17 non-terrestrial network standards of being able to provide a convergence of cellular and satellite on a consumer's iPhone. And again, we're talking real small amounts of bytes of information, like text message based characters or that type of data today over those LEO networks. But in a LEO constellation, to be able to communicate, you have to have line of sight or have a visual of that satellite. So the question is, if you're deploying a LEO constellation, how many satellites do you have in your orbit? And if you only have 20 satellites, it might take some time for that satellite to come overhead so that you can communicate to it. Whereas in a geostationary constellation, and that's the service that Orbcomm runs with Viasat, that satellite is, if your terminal has a line of sight to that geostationary satellite, it will always have line of sight because that satellite will orbit as the Earth orbits. So it'll move with the Earth. So when you do your testing and you do a deployment, and if you have a stationary well that you're monitoring and you have line of sight to that satellite in your test, well, then you know that you will always, for the life of that solution, have that connectivity in place. So there's, again, it goes back to the use case. Is it a mobile solution that you're deploying or stationary? And if it's mobile, then a LEO constellation might serve your purpose better. If it's stationary and you do not have that line of sight, maybe due to a look angle or a building or a mountain is blocking your line of sight, well, then again, a LEO constellation might serve your solution better, because at some point that LEO constellation, that LEO satellite will fly over and you will have a line of sight to it at a certain angle. And that will allow you then to process and send your data.
I think that's fascinating stuff. And I think if I was trying to summarize it, high Earth orbit will give you higher latencies, but if you don't need an awful lot of data, but you need it to be available in so many more areas, that geostationary is just the right solution for most people in that scenario. But if you need a little bit faster, a little bit less latency, the low Earth orbit seems to be the better option for now, if you get the right provider. And there's a number of providers. Everybody hears about Starlink, but there are others. And one of the things that is happening today, it sounds like they're just launching more and more and more satellites so that they can hopefully make this a more cellular-like experience at some point. It's not there yet, but it is where they're trying to go with it. Would you say that's pretty fair?
I would say it's fair if, again, your LEO constellation is deployed at 1,500 kilometers versus a geostationary satellite is 30,000 kilometers. So yes, in terms of relative distance from the Earth's surface, a LEO satellite would have a shorter round trip time if that satellite is overhead. But I could give you instances where my geostationary service has a much lower latency than a LEO constellation, because if I have to wait 15 minutes for that LEO satellite to come overhead and be able to communicate, and then wait for that LEO satellite to then fly over a ground Earth station so it can deliver that payload, my line of sight to my geo could be much shorter. So I don't want to just make it a blanket statement that one has much more lower latency than the other. It's a factor of who the provider is and the number of satellites in their constellation.
Perfect.
Right. So sticking with the capabilities that we've got today and just looking ahead, what advancements do you see in the next generation for satellite IoT? And what are the impacts going to be on the various industries that are serviced, whether it's maritime, logistics, remote asset management?
Yeah, Joe, that's a perfect question. Orbcomm, we've been working for the last several years on the next generation or next evolution of our satellite service. And we just finished launching OGX, which is now the third evolution of our message-based satellite system. So we went from ISAT Data Pro, IDP, and again, we all talk in acronyms in this industry, to now Orbcomm Generation Next, our OGX network. And what are we now bringing to the market? We're bringing the ability to send larger messages. So I said earlier we could do a 10K message to the terminal. We've now increased that to 1 MB. So now I can do a 1 MB message over my satellite connection. We're also able to deliver that message a lot faster. So larger messages, faster delivery. On IDP, a 10 KB message, we would deliver that in 10 minutes is what it would take. So it's near real time, not real time. Well, now over OGX, that 10 KB message is delivered in 30 seconds. We're able to really increase the throughput by 40 times of what we were doing just 6 months ago. An additional benefit with OGX is bringing low data capabilities to the terminal. So now, again, power management is a big concern when you're deploying something in agriculture, whether it's a soil moisture monitoring sensor and you need to deploy something and you might not have power, you're reliant on solar capabilities to recharge your terminal. So now bringing a low power capability in your design, you can now use smaller sized batteries and really compress the footprint of your overall terminal. So those are the benefits that we're now bringing to the ecosystem of our partners that are developing their own terminals to utilize our OGX network.
It sounds very similar to the evolution that we saw in cellular over the last 20 to 30 years.
Mhm.
Yes, the beauty of satellite is that, yes, as we evolve our technology, OGX is certainly can fall back to IDP. The longevity is a big win in the satellite business. Today, my longevity with OGX is out to 2035 with our partner in Viasat, and that's just because we needed to put some date in the agreement. But that's a minimum longevity, which is, think about what the cellular world went through from the 2G sunset, 3G sunset. We're not talking about LTE or 4G sunsets yet, but I'm sure that's just around the corner as 5G is being deployed and you start reading headlines about the 6G technologies that different firms are working on. With satellite, you do not have to worry about network sunsets. We can provide that longevity to your solution. And what we're finding customers doing is taking a satellite modem and adding that to their cellular solution. So their 2G or 3G does sunset, they still have some longevity over satellite until they can do a refresh to their terminal and still have, again, that enhanced visibility to their operations. And that's what the customers really care about. Is it 2G, 3G, 4G? They say, I don't care, just I need my data and can I get my data? And we can bring that resilience to different cellular solutions with satellite.
So just to try to wrap this up, I want to look to the future. And what do you see as how AI can come into this, or how edge computing can come into this? Or what do you see as some of the future use cases as more and more data is able to be sent through these connections as we move forward?
Yeah, that's right. We're starting to see some AI from our partners being integrated into their terminals. One really unique use case that I was able to work with our partner and support them. They're a non-government organization that is deploying solutions to support wildlife. And there's a big industry of poaching that goes on. Certainly we don't have this issue in North America, but in Africa and India and in Asia, there's endangered species that are being poached. And there's different wildlife preserves that are setting up IoT solutions with camera technology. And you think, well, how is camera technology going to work over your message-based satellite technology, Tom? Well, AI is allowing that to happen. So think of a camera that has a motion detector. So it now just detected some motion out in the brush in Africa. Well, it now took a picture of what it just detected, and it has now the intelligence, the AI built into that terminal to be able to render that image. Is it a human? Is it an elephant? Is it a tiger, a hyena? And based on the logic, if it's an animal that is supposed to be there on that preserve, it doesn't need to send anything. But if it can now render that image as a human, it can now compress that image and send that image over a satellite connection back to the wildlife management team and alert them that there is a person in this coordinate on their reserve. And that's now allowing them to be more targeted in their enforcement and protecting endangered species that are in the world. So that is one little, I thought, really cool use of AI. We touched on earlier NTN and GSMA bringing the convergence of cellular and satellite together through that new standards-based non-terrestrial network. And we look at that at Orbcomm as a rising tide lifts all ships, and it's now really created a lot of buzz around satellite capabilities and bringing that resilience and convergence together in solutions. So I think the future will see a lot more NTN-based services. You could see Orbcomm bringing NTN-based satellite services in the future as well, in addition to our IDP and OGX technologies. And I think I haven't even touched on, but another aspect of what the work we're doing at Orbcomm is again, enabling an ecosystem. So bringing in partners to develop terminals, and that starts down at the radio module level. So working with the Quectels and U-Blocks of the world and bringing our technology into their module portfolio will now allow equipment ODMs to really develop around our technology and solutions. So that is happening. So it's a really neat time. Well, AI is the buzz, and we're starting to see that being developed on terminals out on the edge. And I think that will really allow for satellite to be more involved because it can really reduce the amount of data that's needed to be sent over that satellite link.
And I think you're exactly right in that by doing that edge processing, it puts coverage where it just couldn't be feasible with cellular or with some other technology that just would take far too much money to build the networks to get out there. This allows that really remote coverage to be able to do so much more.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of satellite. It's a global coverage. You don't have to worry about roaming agreements, right? So you've got a global
Good
footprint. I do say that,
Right.
but there is one area that it is still a regulated industry. So one of the benefits of Orbcomm being in satellite IoT for 25 years is building a very strong regulatory footprint. So again, it's getting regulatory approval to be able to land satellite data in different countries. So each different countries have their own regulations as to how they allow satellite communications to happen in that country. So we've have a very robust footprint from that regulatory experience that we have. And the work that we're doing to expand from IDP to OGX, we're also working to increase and expand that regulatory footprint as well.
Fascinating stuff. I do think we're going to have to include a glossary with this episode. There's just so many different acronyms. So I'll work on that. But it's now that time for the more than mere genius questions, where we get to know more about Tom Gregor, the guy. And just for full transparency, I forgot to get this to Tom ahead of time. So we are surprising him with these questions. So let's bear with him a little bit here. Okay. So outside of work, what's an activity that you're passionate about, like hobby or volunteering?
My biggest hobby is golf. I'm an avid golfer. Live in northern New Jersey, so now is not the time that we can really get out on the links in New Jersey. And actually, today's a stay home from school day. We had hit by an ice storm last night. But later today, when I get off work, I'm going to tee up the ball with my daughter, and we'll maybe play Pebble Beach or St. Andrews on my golf simulator that I built in a room of the house. So we have the ability to now play golf year round. So that is definitely one of my passions.
That's fantastic.
That is very cool. So name one book or podcast that has inspired you.
I just finished reading Billy Walters' autobiography, The Gambler, and really fascinating book about his life and growing up. I mean, as a professional gambler in Las Vegas, and the life he built in building a very robust company, that total legitimate company that was able to professionally gamble on sporting games, and how he was able to come up with his own AI algorithm and be ahead of the different bookkeepers in Vegas is pretty neat. And his life story of who he's rubbed shoulders with, from Phil Mickelson and other people in the industry, was a really remarkable story.
That's fascinating. I hadn't even thought about bookmakers dealing with AI, but because we've talked on this podcast a bunch of times about cybersecurity and how it's an arms race between the people trying to be the threat actors and the people trying to defend. Both are using the same technology. I hadn't even thought about gambling. So that's
the power of information and what you can do with it, and be ahead of the game.
Interesting.
With insights and visibility to your data.
So who was an important mentor for you at any time in your life?
Oh, I'd have to say my dad. He's always been a mentor of mine, just from growing up on the Little League field to getting involved in forming relationships, just his work ethic, always working hard. He was in the banking industry, so tried banking when I got out of school. And at the time, this is, again, dating myself, in the early 90s, the banking world had a mainframe computing and just different dumb terminals on everyone's desk. And it was at the time where we were now replacing the terminals with personal computers. And I got involved with the computing, and then was dubbed the liaison from the credit department to the IT department. And then that started my path and career into IT, and became a Microsoft certified system engineer. And then that led into the wireless world. And next thing, I'm working for a satellite operator that is bringing visibility to business operations on a global basis. So it's been quite a career. But again, getting back to my dad, of just being a great sounding board. And he and I are just avid New York Jets fans. And probably won't have anyone else on your podcast that would admit to that, but
I was going to say, you poor man.
Yeah, we now have
our season tickets, and we have our routine, and we spend a lot of time in the parking lots, just having great conversations, and certainly always commiserating after the game on Sunday. But he's been a great mentor of mine.
Well, which talent that you do not have would you most like to have?
Talent. Well, I wish I was a better downhill skier. I just was up in Vermont over the weekend, skiing with a good buddy of mine from high school. We go up once a year with my family. I have 4 daughters. He's 2 daughters and a son. And I wish I could ski like I used to, or at least ski moguls a lot better, because going through the glades on Saturday, I just can't turn like I used to, Joe, and cracked into a tree. And if I could show you my wrist right now, I've got, I don't think it's broken, but it's quite bruised on the impact I took of hitting that tree. But yeah, I think that would be a skill that I wish I at least was better at when I was younger, and could retain it now at where I am today.
Reason number 422 why I don't downhill ski. So if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, anywhere in the world. I tell you, we did a family trip to Hawaii.
Pebble Beach?
Yeah, Pebble Beach would be nice. We did a trip to Hawaii, and we were in Oahu for a week. And that was my first and only time there, and fell in love with that island. I really saw just the beauty of that island, that would be a special place to live. Probably a close second would be Scottsdale, Arizona. Spent a little time there a few years ago, met some great friends. Just beautiful country, beautiful. You think the desert's the desert. Well, the desert does flower in the springtime. It's a beautiful place. And they might have a golf course or two there in Scottsdale.
And some of the best tacos in the world.
Yes.
Well, what profession other than yours would you love to try?
Oh, what profession? Wow. I think being a NASCAR driver would be pretty cool. Just being able to have the wherewithal and to get in that car and not only drive 150, 200 miles an hour, but do it and you're only 2 inches away from your nearest competitor around that track. Just the thrill and excitement that would bring would be, I think, pretty unique and something worth trying.
Fascinating stuff. Now we're going to get a little serious here.
Okay.
But who is your favorite superhero?
Oh, superhero. I'll have to go with Batman. I mean, when I was a kid, I had my little Batman plastic helmet that I'd put on with my cape, and
I'll have to get a picture of that for the
Yeah.
I don't know
cover
that we
art of the
still have,
podcast.
yeah. But yeah, I was always a Batman fan when I was growing up, so I think I'd have to side with Bruce Wayne and being Batman as my favorite superhero.
Very cool.
All right. Good. What is your favorite sound?
Sound. I would have to say the crashing of a wave at the beach and just hearing the surf rolling in would be something that's very soothing, and something about being around the water, whether it's the wave crashing or at the lake, the lapping of the water up against the dock is something that just puts me at ease and very relaxing.
Thoroughly agreed. What is your favorite song when you're stressed or you need a lift?
Oh, favorite song. I'm into country music. I don't know that I have a favorite one, but I've been listening to a lot of Dierks Bentley and his Gravel and Gold album. And there's a great tune on there, Walking Each Other Home. And it's really about getting through life and how busy life is, and you have your partners in life and getting through the craziness. And that's a really good one. So if you haven't listened to Dierks Bentley, I'd check that one out. Gravel and Gold, Walking Each Other Home.
Love it.
And our final one, our favorite one. What is the one thing you most want to be known for after you are gone?
Oh, I would like to be known as Tom Gregor. What a great friend. A great friend and dad that raised 4 beautiful daughters and always lent a helping hand to a friend in need.
See, I thought you were going to go with the best sales engineer selling BlackBerries in New England, but okay.
Oh, if BlackBerries were still here, Paul, I'd.
Fair point. Yes, and
that.
I know I am dating all of us, but this was great. I really appreciate it, Tom. It's fascinating where your career is taking you and into the satellite space. It is such a tremendously fast growing and fast evolving space, and I'm so glad that we know you, and I know you've got it well under control at Orbcomm. So I'll put for people to reach you in the show notes, but this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and great to connect with you and Joe again. It's been a fun conversation, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of today's conversation. Thank you for joining us. If today's discussion resonated with you, please consider giving us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only supports our show, but also helps others find us. Thank you so much for listening to MTMG's IT Roundtable. We look forward to bringing you more conversations soon. Until then, take care, and know our team is always here to help. Sláinte.
MTMG, guidance that empowers.